Hello and welcome to RC Resto Workshop, and this is part 2 of the Terra Scorcher rebuild. If you follow my channel, firstly thank you for subscribing and following. Secondly, you probably recognise this car. It's one I bought in a bundle of 4 cars and I paid £70 for it. This was probably the most complete of the 4 cars in the bundle. It's all lovely and original and it's all still there. If you watch part 1, I started taking the car apart and starting assessing it for damage, and we found lots of rust, lots of dirt and a few broken bits and pieces. In part 2 we're going to continue to take it apart. There's a few other bits to take off, and we are going to then clean everything, deal with the rust on all the metal components, and then clean the body shell up, do a bit of paint work maybe. Replace a few parts if they're broken, or repair some if I'm feeling cheap, and then get it back together and hopefully get it running. So I'm really excited about this one because I love the Terra Scorcher. So fingers crossed we will be able to get it running in this video. So let's get on with it, and yeah, let's continue to take it apart. So the final piece of the puzzle really with dismantling this car is going to be this chassis with all the electronics in, and there are some repairs to do on the chassis as well because it's broken at the front, so I'm going to have to do a bit of a fix on that. I don't want to have to buy a new one. They're not massively expensive, but they're not the cheapest thing in the world either, and I think it can be repaired, so I'm going to try and save this original chassis. So just dismantling all the bits and pieces. This is a manual 3-step speed controller. Nowhere near as good as an electronic speed controller, and it just lifts out with the servo that operates it. So you get sort of 3 steps in the speed, a sort of slow, fast sort of thing, and then reverse as well. It's all a bit corroded, it's all a bit messy looking, so I'm going to have a go at cleaning all of this stuff up, see if we can restore it, because this car's not really going to be run too much. And because it's so lovely and original, I really want to try and keep the original running gear in it. So I'm going to try and clean up this electronic setup and get it going again. And that includes the servos and the period sort of 27 megahertz radio gear, which is what a lot of people ran in the day. I mean, I know I had a very similar setup. No controller with this car, but I have got a few old 27 megahertz controllers knocking about, so I'm sure we can find something to fit. So I'm going to take this steering servo out and just lift the mechanism out, because what we're looking for here really is just the bare chassis, and we're just going to take these electronic components off first, unplug the on-off switch and the servo, so all a bit tangled up. And I'm just going to loosen this servo saver off the servo as well. Just going to lift this aerial wire out. They loop around so they don't get pulled back in, and that just pulls through the chassis, and that is, aside from the on-off switch, the electronics pretty much liberated from the chassis. And smaller screwdriver needed for this. Just going to pop the on-off switch out. And the electronics out of the chassis. A few more screws to come off here. These are just the battery compartment. They hold the battery in place. You can flip these open to change them over, and they just take the standard, 7.2 volt stick packs. Pop those off. There's one either side. And now the steering arms, which are an unusual design on this. They're quite exposed perhaps, but they seem to work quite well. Get the usual Tamiya play in it, but yeah, the steering's reasonably accurate on this chassis, and not too bad. So that mechanism there is just going to pop off, and that leaves us pretty much with the bare chassis. And that's ready to be cleaned. There's just a couple other screws here. This one I'm taking off camera here was holding the Arnold Applewhite driver figure in place, and there is a bracket on the back here. This helps hold the shell on, so that just needs to come off and be cleaned up, but it's all in perfectly usable condition. Now I did this next bit off camera. I just took all this electronical gubbins from inside and just dismantled them and gave them a good clean up. I haven't recorded it because it isn't particularly interesting. If people are interested, I can do a video on it, but yeah, suffice to say I gave them a good old clean up, and we'll be able to see those going back inside the car later in the video. And the next thing I did was to clean all the plastic components up on the chassis and suspension. This is just soapy water, dish soap, washing up liquid, whatever you want to call it. Good scrub. You don't want to see this, but rest assured I gave them all a good wash, and that's all I do with them. Now the screws were all very corroded, so I've put them in pure white vinegar here, and this actually tackles the oxidization. It will unfortunately take away the yellow nickel coating. If you've got old screws, they tend to be yellow nickel coated, and you will find that it takes that finish away from it. So just be careful if you are going ahead and doing this. In my case, the screws were so corroded I didn't really have a choice. Now I left them like this for around 24 hours, and then I gave them a good rinse off and dry, and then I oiled them, sprayed them with some oil, and they come up really quite well. They're not perfect, but they're really not looking too bad at all. So that was really it for the cleaning, and now the exciting bit, we get to put it back together. Right, better start with this bodywork. The bodywork's actually in really good condition. I say really good. Good for 30 years old. There's a bit of damage at the front here, around where the body mount goes, and it's inevitably cracked here and here, which is pretty standard fare for a body of this age. The driver, he's looking pretty retro. He's got a silver set of overalls on. Don't know what possessed him to do that. And obviously we've got the unusual Terra Scorcher wing there. I was thinking of repainting driver, but actually I want to keep him original. I might give his helmet a bit of a touch up. That came out wrong. I'm going to repaint the helmet because it's a bit matte looking, so I'm going to give that a good seeing to, and maybe his face, which probably isn't picking up very well on the camera, is a bit amateur, so I might be able to do something with that. Although for the most part I think he looks pretty cool, and he's original, so let's keep him that way. Now a few of the decals are a bit knackered on here, like Arnold Applewhite on the top there, but mostly it's just dirt. So I'll take off any really ruined stickers like this, probably take this one off as well just to give it a bit of continuity, and the rest of it just tidy up some of these frilly edges. I might do some detailing around here, I haven't decided yet, but it's just going to be kept completely standard because it's so lovely and original. why would I go ahead and change it? So I'm not going to. So the first job really is going to be that. Now the next job is to sort the wheels, and I'm going to use a bit of what we like to say as what we like to describe as TV magic here. So let me just grab the old wheels and I will show you how I'm going to repair those. Okay, so here are the old wheels. They're actually in really good condition for 35-year-old wheels. Just dirty, really. The tyres had it, but aside from that, they're not bad. So we're going to do a bit of TV magic to repair them. And here it is. 3, 2, 1, and there they are. So I am of course lying. These aren't the original wheels. This is a replacement set that came with my re-release Terra Scorcher. They've never been used, and they are perfect for this car. I don't like these wheels as a rule. I think they're ugly and the tyres are very hard to get hold of. So for my re-release, which I will be running a bit more, I am going to put some different wheels on. So these ones are perfect for the Terra Scorcher. And in case you're wondering, they're the old wheels. I might still do something with those, but for the sake of the fact I have a brand new, perfectly white set of new wheels, I'm not going to bother doing anything with these ones. So the next job really, that was an easy job by just getting the other wheels out. The next job is going to be actually cleaning this body shell. Before I do that though, I'm just going to show you one other thing that I've been working on off camera. Done quite a bit of work on the electrics. Now I don't know if they're coming out really well on the camera there, but this has all had a clean up and the motor has too. And of course I'm lying about the motor as well. This is a spare, genuine Tamiya spare that I had lying around. And is a Mabuchi RS540SH, not the usual Johnson motor, I believe. So really cool. It's still got its original decal, fitted to the cleaned up motor plate, fitted the pinion using the correct tool, which I still had lying around. I always stick these on the, if you struggle to remember which is which, Tamiya motors, for reasons that are not immediately apparent to me, use yellow and green wires. The yellow is, generally speaking, with these motors positive, and the green is negative, but I just put a couple of sleeves on them just to remind me not to wire up the wrong way round. You could put some sleeves on these, but I'm not going to bother. So this has all come out quite nice. The servo, haven't actually tested the servo, but the 3-step mechanical speed controller, forward and reverse speed controller, has cleaned up. I haven't tested it, so this could be a massive fail on camera when we do get to do it all up. That was very corroded. That's about as clean as I can get it, and I'm not overly worried. But yeah, really pleased with that. It's all looking quite nice. And I also cleaned up this, which is the receiver, which I'm planning to use as well. I've got an old 27 meg handset knocking about the place somewhere, and then of course the servo. Now I actually cleaned these up, left them stuck together because I figured it's so well sealed on, sort of stuck on there, that I didn't really want to upset it and just leave it as is. And yeah, so that's those. And the other thing I've done whilst off camera, again, I haven't included it. If you want to see it, then I've just got this wire caught on my camera, hang on. If you want to see it, then by all means say in the comments and I will do something to, I'll make a video of putting these together. But I put them together as per instructions. Now you can see probably the shininess of my fingers. There's a bit of oil still on them. I haven't even wiped them down yet. But I've just rebuilt the shocks and put some fresh oil in there. I run quite a soft oil, but they're feeling really nice. I did a little bit of cleaning up inside, but they were in really good condition once they were clean. Just need to wipe the excess oil off them, and I have done the rest. And also the new gearbox has arrived, which I've just dropped. New gearbox casings, they were broken, and I ordered a new one online, and there's a rear shock as well, in case you're wondering. They're really not too bad at all either. So we're pretty much ready to put it together. We're going to clean the bodywork first, and the other thing, just to note, a couple of things. One, I haven't taken the diffs apart yet, so that's a job I will do on camera. These are a bit notorious for having notchy diffs, especially the re-released ones. So we'll have a look at those just to see if they're okay. They feel alright. And one last thing I've done, and I will go through this in detail in a moment, is I've repaired that chassis, and I haven't finished that yet. Can you see there, the grey piece here? This was cracked. The other side was cracked, I've just filled that. That's coming out on the camera very well, with everything behind it. But these are cracked. These are just where the gearbox mounts onto the chassis. So my camera's having a hard time focusing on it because I've got too much crap on the desk. There we go. And that grey piece there, which you can just see on camera, I've just put in there, but I'll show you what I did there. I'm just going to paint it black as well, just so it matches. But the chassis is cleaned up quite nicely, so we're pretty much ready to put it back together. So like I said, the first thing I'm going to do is clean this body, and then we'll start reconstructing the actual car. So exciting times. Hopefully very soon we can get it running. So I want to protect this as best as possible, and the simplest way to do that is just to use very gentle cleaning techniques. Now what I'm going to do with this, I've got a rag, a fairly clean rag, cleanish, and some isopropyl alcohol, and I'm just going to put a little bit on my rag and just give the shell a clean. And this is nice and gentle, it evaporates, it doesn't leave grease or residue, and it should just lift any muck off the shell. I'll get a cotton bud or Q-tip if you're in America. I think you call them Q-tips into all these little nooks and crannies. But it's just really a case of getting the surface muck off as gently as possible. As I say, the isopropyl alcohol works fine. I wouldn't put it on the painted side, but on this Lexan polycarbonate side, what it will do is it will take off any sort of bits of crap on there, and it will also just gently lift the dirt and clean it. That's looking good already as it goes. If we look at this 7 here, it's a bit mucky. And just the smallest amount of isopropyl alcohol really does seem to clean it up real nice. And then once you've got all the rubbish off it and all the grime off, you could give it a polish with a little bit of whatever is your poison, really, silicone, or I don't know what people use. Let me know if you've got any good ideas, I'd love to hear them. And actually, just while we're on the subject of that, anyone watching and you have commented with advice, it's all actually really gratefully received. I'm no expert, I just kind of know what I know, really, and I have learnt from some very talented people in the past, but for the most part this sort of stuff is all self-taught, and it's always good to hear other people's take on things. I'm always open to people suggesting things to me to try, and I certainly will try them. So thank you to people who've already commented. I do read them, generally read all of them if I can, if I've got time, and generally I do take on board the advice that people give me because a lot of it's helpful. So thank you for that. This is cleaning up quite nicely. There's a couple of bits here. See that on the camera here? Look, I'm running my finger behind it where the paint has got a bit thin, so I might just try and fill that. I'll try and get a bit of a colour match going with some acrylic paint and just touch it in. This shell is hand painted, you can see that there. Look, I will just give this a little wipe on the inside, but I don't want to put too much alcohol on and soften the paint up, although it's been there for 35 odd years, I'm sure it'll be fine. But actually not a bad job really, and quite common for cars to be hand painted back in the day, before spray cans were sort of really readily available. So just some people just bought the pots of paint because they weren't as good at using them. And to be honest with you, for the most part it comes out really well, and this, I have to say, the dirt on here is coming off really easily. So I'm just going to get in all the nooks and crannies. I'll do that off the camera. I'm going to remove Arnold Applewhite, sadly. I think those stickers have had it. And I think we're going to be left with a reasonably nice looking shell. And I'll just do that spoiler, and I will give Arnold himself a bit of a clean up as well, because that's looking a bit grubby. You can see that on the camera there. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this, but that's all I use. Isopropyl alcohol, a rag, and one of these cotton bud Q-tip, whatever the hell you want to call it, just to get into the small areas. But I'll do all that and we'll see what it looks like. Okay, so Arnold has had a clean, as you can see, and I've repainted his helmet to be a bit shinier. There's still some work to do. I'll do the black detailing on that and his eyes. Shell's cleaned up nicely, and I've given it a bit of a polish, and yeah, it's come up a lot better than I'd hoped. I'm going to use this blue paint and a scrap of polycarbonate here, and I'm just going to try and get a colour match, really. This is just cheapo acrylic paint that I bought. I'm going to try and get a colour match to the body shell. You can see that's far too bright as it goes. And I'm going to just try and fill in some of those little gaps. But I'm just going to paint a bit onto the polycarbonate. This is very basic, and just to see really if I can get a decent match on the colour. Or at least similar. It doesn't have to be decent because I'm not repainting the whole thing, just a few bits and pieces. Once it's on there, obviously it'll be a bit different when it's dry, but I just want to hold it up and just see what the colour looks like. Now that's obviously too light, so I'll go ahead and I will mix in a couple of other colours just to see if we can get it a bit darker. So add a tiniest bit of green, I think is the plan here, and a spot of black paint there. I'm not going to mix them all up in a big gloopy mess. I'm just going to slowly combine them because I don't want to put all that black in, it will just go too dark. But try and get a little bit of black in with the blue, and immediately you can see how dark that's gone. And I am just going to put a touch of green in as well, because I really do think a little bit of green will just give it a slightly different tint. Maybe that is a bit too green, a bit more blue. It's starting to look a bit more like it. Let's give that a good mix. Chuck that on the polycarbonate here. Just see if that looks better next to it. It's a bit lighter, but I would probably say that's good enough for the job I'm planning to do with it. And then simply a case of just running over the bits where you can see the paint has come away, and just give it a good layer up. And it's as simple as that. So I'm going to go ahead and layer all this up, try and make it look a bit smarter. I hold it up to the light, I can see the gaps in the paint, and that's where I need to paint it in. So yeah, let's go ahead and finish this. Okay, so you join me. I've put the electrics back in the Terra Scorcher because one, it takes a while to get all the wires tidied up and it's probably very boring to watch, and two, I had a few issues with the servo. I stupidly fitted a servo, I fitted the original servos back into it and then realised they don't actually fit very well with this receiver that came with the car. It seems to be a newer type of receiver that works better with these newer types of servo, which come with these yellow, red and black wires. These, if I grab one, so the actual servos that came with it were these older, bigger servos with the white, red and black wires. Now my understanding with these is from memory, I think mine actually, my original one had these. They actually had plugs that go into here, don't go directly into the receiver. I can't remember, it's so long ago. Tell me in the comments if you do know. I may have a receiver that works with these servos, but it doesn't matter. I had two other servos which I fitted. Now I fitted one of them only to find it didn't work, so I had to take it back out again. So that's always a lesson, to check your servos before you start putting them in your car. But it's all set up now. It all seems to work quite well. I've got my period It's actually a bit newer than the car, but I've got a 27 megahertz ACOMS Techni Plus. This is a newer version, actually, probably from the early 2000s, I would think. I don't know where I got it from. Found it with all my stuff. Someone might have given it to me at some point. But just to show it works, we have steering, and we have, without flipping the motor around too much, we have power to the motor. That's all lovely stuff, so it's all working well, so pleased with that. So now the exciting bit of this is we can go ahead and put this car back together, which is exactly what I'm going to do. Okay, so the first job before I do anything is to clean the bearings up. 35-year-old Tamiya bearings, they look like the originals, and I've got to say, they are smooth as silk still. They seem really good condition. There's no graunching or grittiness. What I'm doing here is I'm just giving them a quick wipe over with a sort of rag, a bit of an oily rag, I suppose, just to get any dirt off them. I use a bit of WD-40. I know most modelers hate it, but actually it's pretty good at degreasing stuff. And perfectly safe on bearings. Don't fill them up with it, because it's not really a suitable lubricant in that sense. I'm just cleaning the outside dirt off these, give them a quick whiz, and then I'm going to bath them. What I tend to do is bath them in silicone oil. Actually, let's do a bit of dirt on those, in a race. I bath them in silicone oil. Bearings, don't grease bearings, you put oil in bearings, essentially. For me, these sorts of bearings, I put oil in them. Again, you may disagree. You may well like to put grease in them, and obviously certain bearings do have grease in them. I find these ones just run best with a little bit of silicone oil in them, and like I said, if I just bath them in silicone oil, it gets into the race without having to take it apart, because you sort of run the risk of damaging the bearing. You could just buy new ones, but because this car's so lovely, an original one, because these are Tamiya bearings in the first instance, then you know, they will be good quality. Never forget these are 30 odd years old and they're still working perfectly, so I don't think the car's seen much use, to be honest, but nevertheless they are still really not bad at all. I'll do the rest off camera, but they're not all going to fit, there's so many of them. I'm just going to put a layer of silicone oil in my little bath there. This is actually 50 weight, it's probably a bit thick, and it's a bit of a waste really, but I do try and keep it. And the problem is with 50 weight, I don't actually use it much. It's too heavy for a lot of my applications, so I tend to use it for this. I don't know why I bought it. I've even got a 70 weight kicking around somewhere. Same with the thrust washers. I am just going to bathe them in silicone oil, just so it gets in those races inside that bearing there, the thrust washer races. And okay, so that's job done. Next up, I think we'll just start looking at the gearbox casings. If you've watched the first part of this video, you'll know that I've got some new casings. These are brand new. The other ones were cracked and a bit damaged. So this is good news, and we can start putting these together. Let me just move the camera so we can see. And I believe this is the rear gearbox because it's massive. And actually off screen I do have, this is why I have my computer handy, because I've not made one of these for a long time. I do just need to remind myself what goes where. We also need to take the diffs apart, I just realised. So giving these a good soak, and we're going to find the gears. We need the spur gear. All the gears cleaned up quite nicely actually, and we just need a couple of the shafts as well. We probably need a clean, which is that one there, and I think we're going to need this one here, this tube, which is again not looking too bad. Cleanliness. If you remember, I was talking about the drive shafts. Well, these are the drive shaft cups. and you just cannot believe how filthy they are. I don't know what they've used. I mean, it could have been oil, but it's more likely to be grease. It is seriously sticky and hard on there. So whatever they've used, they haven't taken the old off. And same with these drive shafts and the universals. So they all need a darn good cleaning, which I shall do at some point. The standard Tamiya grease, 35 years old. I'm going to replace that with some lithium grease. I know it's not the best grease for diffs. I don't really need this to have a limited slip effect or anything like that. I just want it to work smoothly. They're in good condition. There's no doubt these are in good condition. They're in lovely condition, in fact. So I'm going to give this a quick clean down off camera. You don't want to see me do that. So I'm going to give it a little scrub with some WD. Then with some alcohol just to take the WD off, and then I'm going to stick some lithium grease in there and put it back together, so we can put the gearbox back together. Right, I'm going to do it off camera because it's boring. You don't want to see me clean a diff, do you? If you do, let me know and I'll make a separate video, but actually, you know, to be honest, I'm just going to scrub it and get all this crap off it. Okay, diff's clean. Got myself some premium grease. I use this for building bike bearings and stuff, so bottom brackets and stuff on bikes. It's nice and smooth, and it's fairly stiff, so it should give a reasonable gripping effect, a bit of a gripping effect, so a bit of a limited slip type effect. I'm just going to smother some of these parts in just a sort of light layer of it. Don't get mental with it, you know, don't be mad with it. You want a fair bit in there to make it a bit sticky, but yeah, don't go crazy. Don't pack it full of grease, it just won't run smoothly enough. There'll be too much lag in it, I would think. Just going to give that a nice coating. Pop me, whatever they're called, satellite gears, something, planetary gears, satellite gears, whatever they're called, crown gears, back on. Make sure they're running nice and smooth. Dab of grease on each shaft, and then they sit in here. Again, just going to pop a little bit of grease in each one of these, not too much, just enough to prevent it from wearing. And again, this grease is safe to use. Quite often I put red rubber grease in there actually, but because it's safe on plastics and quite sticky. Doesn't work well in gearboxes. Wish I hadn't put that in now. Hands are slippery. It really doesn't want to come out. It's wedged itself in there quite nicely. Right, just making sure that grease was in there. Okay, so let's pop one of these back in. I believe they're both the same. I'm going to stick a little bit more grease on there, just in the mesh of the teeth really. Pop these back in, like so. Yeah, see, that's, can you hear that being quite sticky? Kind of what I want. Kind of just about right actually. It feels pretty good. And then this one goes back on here, like so. And there we go. One diff. Put that together. I'm just going to screw that up. with these 3 screws, and that is it. Essentially, it's simple as that. Put them back together, and then we can get this back into the gearbox. Very stiff screws on this. I can't imagine that's been apart since it was first made 35 odd years ago, 34, 35 years ago. So, to be honest, the grease has done quite well. It's still quite clean actually, but they do degrade with time. I'm just not going to go crazy with those until I've got all 3 in, and then I'll just nip them up, as they say. Really stiff these actually. That's my other little. I don't know why they're so tight. Okay, give them a nip up. Just want to check that that is smooth. I find one of the cups which is still filthy. I don't want to get the filth on or in the diff. Just going to wipe off camera there, but it's just so I can spin this diff really. Yeah, that feels nice. So it's quite stiff, but it's nice and smooth. It feels really smooth, but there is a stiffness to that. So it's fair to say these dry shaft cups are absolutely filthy. This is one I've cleaned up, and it took quite a bit of doing. This stuff is literally welded on. I've actually had to scrape it off with a blade. But yeah, it's protected them quite nicely. Whatever it was, grease, I suppose. But this is a good, this is a good indication that you should probably change the grease, or clean old grease off and re-grease regularly with these things, because they end up like that, which inhibits running and just is just horrible. This stuff presumably has been on there for 30 odd years, and it needed scraping off, a damn good clean. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and clean this one. I won't bother showing you that, and then I'm going to just fit them back into the gearbox here. This one's actually ready to go in. I can't do it very well holding the camera, so that just sits in like that, and that. Then we can start mounting the suspension pieces. Right, next up is the suspension. I've already fitted this arm here, and got these are the wishbones, this upper arm, and these are the lower wishbones or lower suspension arms. Got some screws there, that one's been greased up, and then I've just put these together. Now, according to the instructions, these need to be 11mm, although they are fully adjustable. So if I get my trusty digital calipers and give that a measure, just about, there you go, 11mm, so they can be bolted on, and then we're going to fit these lower ones as well. So, very simply, put the rose joints back in, or the ball joints, whatever you want to call them, lubricated them up with a bit of silicone, just so they move freely in the plastic. And we've got a spacer on this end, that sits in there like so, and then this 22mm screw goes in there like so, and we just need to tighten that up with the screwdriver. Again, really important that you don't over tighten these. This is a new one, so it's going to be a bit of work to screw it in. There we go. When they're new, they just take a little bit of persuasion. And I'll just finger tight that. Take this grease off. Nice, lovely suspension arms, ready to go on. Now, for the arms, the lower arms, we need to get these wheel hubs, and that means putting a couple of these bearings that I have been soaking in oil in there. I'm just going to pop them in, and then I will wipe the excess off. Messy business. Pop that in there. Line that up like so. So they go in there, and then this actually mounts onto here. Like so, I'm going to use this 25mm pin, which I think they didn't use on the re-release. Without getting my re-release out and checking, I couldn't tell you. I'm just putting a bit of grease on those. Really important on these, you get loads of play in them. That slides through. Wipe the excess grease off my hands. Wipe the excess grease off there, and then it's just one of the little bitty clips which people love to ping across the room and lose. They're very, very small, they're very, very hard to find. And actually these ones are not in the best of conditions, so got one here, it's actually quite rusty. I thought what I will do is I'm just going to stick this on a bit of sandpaper and give it a little bit of clean up. There we go, that's better. Some just 1200 grit wet and dry paper, just to take all the corrosion off that. Now the tricky piece, and no doubt on camera I'll end up pinging this across the room. I tend to seat them like that, and then I get myself something just to clip it on with. You can actually buy a tool for this. There you go, pinged it off, didn't go anywhere. I'm trying to use the wrong tool, it's because I can't be bothered to go and get the correct tool. So what I will use is just a screwdriver. I'm just going to edge that on like that. And there we go, that's on, and that's done. And that is ready to fit onto the bottom of the car. And I'll just do the other side as well. Okay, so I've kind of put this side together just to save a bit of time really off camera, and just the last piece that needs to go in is this 15mm bolt which secures this upper arm through there, and then just a washer and a nut on the end, and then we'll do the other side. So just things to note with these really. Again, my usual mantra of don't over tighten stuff, because you will end up cracking things. How's that feeling? Not too bad. Must be a touch tight. Let these out just a turn. Okay, so what we need then is this arm, which I've already popped the pin through an E-clip. The bearings are in the hub. I'm just going to lift this arm up and then just seat that where it's supposed to go, which is between those two. I will just put some lubrication on those, and I also need to find the other drive shaft, which I can't see actually. Where's that gone? Now, the cup is here, and it is just the worst mess. I don't know what this stuff is, but look, I can literally shave it off. It's so solid and sort of solidified. I don't know what grease was used. It may have been the original grease. I don't know why it's all on the outside of these cups. It could have leaked out the diff, I suppose. But this is an outer cup, so it would have had to travel a long way. Maybe they've just greased the wrong part of the cup. These really don't need grease on the outside. Right, that's looking decidedly cleaner. I'd say that's clean enough. So let's give that one last little wipe down. I put a little bit, tiniest bit of grease on here. That's the contact point. It doesn't need lots because it's a bearing, so in theory it will spin inside the bearing. But they don't always do that, so I'm just going to pop that in there. That's nice and smooth. Now I just need to find the other drive shaft, which will be in my box of tricks here. And then if I pop that in, I'm going to give that a clean, pop it in, and then we can fit that lower arm as well. So in order to fit this, there's one last thing to put in, and that's this prop shaft, which I've just cleaned up. I'm just going to put a tiny bit of grease on the end, and that actually sits in there. But what I want to do before I do any of that is feed it through into the chassis before we try and mate it up, or we're going to cause all sorts of bother when we try and bring the two together. That's not fouling on anything. It's quite a tight fit in there actually. Actually might need to move the receiver actually over. And then these, it almost sort of drops down into the chassis. It's quite tight for some reason. So what I am going to do is grease this point here and here to stop wearing those out. I'm just going to put a little bit on these as well. Right, push the prop shaft back into the chassis there. And I'm going to just try and pop this one in. Doesn't want to go, what's stopping that one? It's just a bit of a tight fit, I think. There we go. Nice and snug, that's dropped out, which is annoying. Needs to go back through there. I think it sits that side of the aerial. We do need to move this over slightly. Good job I put Velcro on it. Is that going to rub on there? It is, isn't it? Might need to reroute the on-off switch as well, because it seems to be fouling on that prop shaft there. Anyway, let me just have a quick look. I just need to check. So it's just 12mm screws, 3 lots of 12mm screws just to hold that rear end on. So let's go ahead and screw it in. next up is going to be the suspension components for the rear, and I need to find the shock tower, which is here, and that goes on here, but we need to fit the anti-roll bar first. So let's get it around this way. The anti-roll bar, which is a fair bit thicker at the rear than it is at the front. I'm just going to put a little bit of grease on it in the middle, where it sits in there, like that. And then we want this to go this way, and that goes on there like so. Amazingly, we found these. Look, these are off my original, and I anodised them blue. Look, for when I used to race, I used to have an anodising kit in my garage years ago as a teenager, and I used to, if I didn't go out to smoke and drink like any normal teenager, I'd sit there and anodise aluminium parts for my Tamiya race car. However, I have found these two as well, which were spares. Which I must have bought at some point, and they're in much better condition than the corroded ones on this car. So I am going to fit these instead. I think I'm going to press that in first. This could be tricky because these are tight. Difficult to do on camera without making a total fool of myself. In fact, let's pop it off that end and do this end first. I'm not sure if you can see this on the camera. I do apologise if you can't. Whoops. Drop it in all the dirt. Should have cleaned my desk first. Right. There we go. That one's in. That one's back in. And let's zoom in so you can see this. So we're just going to take this, just going to put the smallest blob of grease on there just to protect it, and that will go in there. We just loosen this off. In there, and we can just tighten that up like that. And again, don't over tighten them. And there you go. Good. Okay, so that's on, looking lovely as well. All that remains now is just to refit the rear shocks, which means the screw goes through. That goes through there. That sits on there. Actually, one thing I will always do is with these brass bushes, again, just the tiniest bit of lube on there, just to keep things sweet. Just going to take the excess off that. Lovely. Put that through there. And then we screw this on. Like so. And at the rear, another SP7 spacer plus one of these blue plastic spacers. this is the bit I always remember hating on these, is trying to get the nut on the end. Always fun. Now Tamiya's TFS, as I put it, Tamiya factory setting. Just put it on the end there to give it a ride height. And again, I see no reason to change that at this stage. Now the reason for that, and I said this I think on one of my other videos, is it's just a good baseline to start before you start mucking around with these cars. We all like to, you know, everyone likes their car set up a certain way. But always set it to the factory settings first, and that way then it's nice, it feels good. That way you can always go back to it, and that's like really your, what we'd call a datum point. So that's your baseline, and then you can make adjustments from there, from factory. You know, if you adjust it and then adjust it again, then adjust it again, you may forget where you are with it. With the factory, you can always adjust it from factory setting and then move it back to factory setting to try something different. Do you see what I mean? So yes, that's what I would always do. You don't have to, of course, but it helps when you're trying to find a good setup for these cars. Right, I'm going to pop the other side on, do that off camera, because you've already seen one side, you didn't see the other. And then that's pretty much rear end done, I think. And so with the back end well and truly sorted, it's all looking very good, feeling good. Okay, I haven't done the motor wires yet. And Arnold Apple White looking a whole lot better with his new paint job. We're ready to put the front end together, and actually we're really not far off running this thing, which I'm amazed by. It's gone together incredibly well. So to that end, join me in part 3, where we'll get that front end together and we'll take this thing for a run and get to see it in all its glory. Thank you so much for watching. It is appreciated. I'm sorry this video is a bit long and possibly a bit tedious in places. It's hard trying to find the balance of getting the car together and showing you what you want to see. So thanks for persevering with it if you've stuck out to the end. Please do like, please do comment, please do subscribe. I'm sorry the videos are slow coming. I'm so busy, but I do try and do them as much as I can when I have some spare time. So all it remains for me to say is thanks so much for watching again, and we'll see you on part 3 where this project will be finished. So see you next time. Ta-da!